there's got to be some oversight at Justice. And they said, well, you could write a letter to the Inspector General of the Department of Justice, and they will get back to you within 6 months. Here it is 15 months later. That was 15 months ago. And I wrote a letter, and I felt it was well done. I've got copies of that letter here if anybody wants to see it. I'm going to hand deliver it tomorrow again to the Inspector General before I get the hell out of town. Yeah,
we're going to try massive lawsuits, not just here in the U.S., but try internationally. Because I know some people right.
That's a great idea. Yeah. William Pepper. I'm friendly with William Pepper, the attorney who represented the King family, and he's also represented Sir Hans Sirhan. Now he's an international barrister within London. He's an American, but he's qualified to practice law in The Hague and British law, English common law in London. So, yeah, maybe you and I and Webster should get together and talk to William Pepper about using the Hague, international body of law. What do you think about that idea?
Look, I think somehow you're missing the tremendous emergency that we're in. I think this is many elements of unreality. In other words, there's even a pathos in this idea that we're going to appeal to the new peace angel, Barack Obama, and that he is somehow going to make this stuff right. I think this is insane. I think you're dealing with a sinister phenomenon.
Sir, I had to ask you to focus on the question. The question is, what about, we're not talking about appealing to Obama, we're talking about appealing to the international courts at The Hague.
Look, the International Court of The Hague will do nothing to embarrass the new regime because everybody in Europe is gaga for Obama. Everybody who hated Bush. Look, I think Christianity has one very valuable thing. It's not good to be blinded by hate. And what I see is people are so blinded by their hatred of Bush and Cheney and neocons, which I understand. In some ways I share. But not to the point that I was blinded. Not to the point that I couldn't see what was happening. And that the wheels are changing. And the revolving stage has revolved. Right? The whole stage has turned around. All of the ideological categories have been turned upside down. And I've always thought that legal action is futile. That's my basic approach. Now, we have Phil Berg, and he has a release. And people are, I only have one copy, because I didn't have my. This is the guy he's in the Supreme Court trying to show that Obama was born in Kenya and is a citizen of Indonesia, and he's fighting with nothing. And he's Phil Berg from the 9/11 Truth Group. He's one of the few people who has successfully made the transition from the old world, right, to the new world, to the world that you've got to fight in now, from the last war to the current war. And I'm always very pessimistic about legal action because I once had to fight, I fought all the way through the U.S. legal system from the lowest level in New York State up to the U.S. Supreme Court to try to stay on the ballot when I was running for Senate in New York State in 1986. And I knew they were rotten 20 years ago, 25 years ago now. I think that's futile. But the propaganda of what Berg has done has moved the world because Berg has gotten 150 million people come to his website. Maybe it's 200 million by now. Here, pass this around. We'll see. It's just Berg saying that he's going to keep fighting and that this is a really sad, it's a sad day. It's a grim day.
But does that guy have any sources?
Huh?
Does Berg have any sources for his assertion?
Of course he does. I mean, I'm a biographer myself, and I'll tell you that he's got sources. In other words, here's the simple thing.
Wait.
If Obama, listen, here's the source. If Obama wants to put it all to rest, bring out what is known as the vault copy of the birth certificate. It is a full, detailed birth certificate. It doesn't say certificate of live birth. It says birth certificate. It says physician, time born, mother, father, and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's very detailed. The original, please. You want to put this all aside? Look, if I had a website attacking you, and I got 150 million hits, and you had the document, wouldn't you say, all right, let's shut this guy up. Let's bring the document out, put it in a room, let the press come in, let them take pictures, and it's over. And the guy collapses. And he won't do it. And the point is that Obama is not qualified to be president. And of course, the reason this is important is Obama is now the president, okay? He's got to be blackmailed. In other words, what happens if he decides to do something the Wall Street guys don't want? They've got to be able to tell him, Barkey, we'll have you in jail in 72 hours.
Who is qualified to be president?
Huh?
Who is qualified to be president?
That's not the issue right now. The issue is who.
I think he means just like U.S.
And
citizenship.
what it means is you've got to be a natural born. You've got to be born in the U.S. and you've got to maintain your citizenship. And he struck out on both of those. So this, you can say, well, what are you, xenophobic? You hate foreigners? No, it's not this. It's that the fact that he doesn't qualify to be president makes him blackmailable. That's also the problem with Rezko, Auchi, Al-Samari, Blagojevich, and Daley, is that they can indict him within 72 hours. He's up to his neck in this stuff. He has cavorted in a cesspool of corruption. Valerie Jarrett, who's sitting in the White House tonight as senior advisor, is Rezko in a skirt. Whatever Rezko did, she did. Rezko is now headed for the federal pen, we think. Valerie Jarrett is exactly the same person, except she's a different, version of the same thing. The model for this is Harry Truman. Harry Truman came out of a dirty machine. It was called the Pendergast machine of Kansas City, Missouri. Pendergast had been put in jail for a year. They could say to him, Harry, you do what we tell you, or you'll go the same way as your man Pendergast. You'll be in jail within 72 hours. And they can do that with Barton. They get him on the citizenship issue. They can get him on the Chicago stuff and probably more stuff that I don't know. You can't have a president that's blackmailable. And of course, let me mention the other one. Larry Sinclair, guy that I've gotten to know. I helped him when he came here to the Democratic National Committee. His book is coming out soon. Now, this is the gay man who says that he had a homosexual encounter with Obama in 1999 with crack cocaine and all the rest. And I know him, and I think this is a highly intelligent person. He was put in jail by Beau Biden, the corrupt nepotist son of the current vice president, who threatened him with life in prison. They arrested him in the National Press Club. They took him to Delaware. They had him spend the weekend in the D.C. jail. I went to see him on Monday. He was gone. He had gone to Delaware. They threatened him with life in prison. Life in prison!
For what?
Because they said, oh, you're a three-time loser. You have previous convictions. You've been a con artist in the 1985, and now you've got some warrant that we've hooked up. So they said, you are going to go to jail for the rest of your life after arresting him in the temple of the First Amendment. Huh? You want to talk fascism? That sounds like fascism to me. So this is the world that we're in now. And I'm telling you, all of the stuff with 9/11 is relevant and germane. But the situation now of the average person is desperate beyond your belief.
Can I say something?
You can't go to a bread line and say to people, I want to talk to you about 9/11 truth. This time is gone. And I believe the 9/11 truth movement has the main achievement that we can say for ourselves is that we probably contributed to stopping the attack on Iran when that was the policy. That policy has now been abandoned. The policy is now to use Iran against the Russians and to attack Pakistan, to destroy Pakistan. So that's a real achievement. You can be proud that you did that, right? That was important. But now history has moved on, and you can't stand on the same street corner repeating the same old slogans.
They keep pointing to it every minute.
But they don't. That's not the basis of the new regime.
Okay, let's try to keep it succinct.
You don't do what they
I have
say.
a question. You seem very combative, and you've made a lot of points, and it seems like you kind of figured out where we are today.
Yes.
I've heard the word fight come out of your mouth probably 50 times tonight, and that's one approach to looking at it as something we need to counter with another fight, and I don't know if that's completely where we need to be, and as a group talking about where we are as a people in this country and where the system is, or where we think it is at least, and talking about those things. I think the approach maybe should be looked at a little differently. And again, I heard the word fight come out of your mouth a lot. It is what it is. We are in this is a current system, a regime with banksters and greedy politicians, a military-industrial complex gone wild. And so here we are, and we're looking at it. But I don't think you can fight it. I think you need to embrace it and understand it completely in order to make real change. Would you agree?
No, I absolutely
No?
disagree. I think to embrace it is that what you're talking now is
I'm not saying
moral and intellectual suicide as an individual.
So what would you do
You're
to make
talking about
substantive
eating
changes in our
human
country?
beings.
What would you do what would your top 3 things be to make substantive changes in our country?
Here's a 4-point program.
Okay.
4-point